Welcome to episode 147 of Timm Talk, the podcast about the DC animated universe, co-created by Bruce Timm. I am Chris Lord.
I'm Cameron Dexter.
And we're back. We're here. We're healthy. We're continuing to refine our remote recording system.
We are.
And in other news, the world is full of idiots and Comic-Con is canceled.
There is. There was a post that I saw this morning. I want to read it word for word because it was so good. It's people going to beaches during a pandemic makes every dumb character in a horror movie now way more plausible.
Yeah, right?
And I'm like, fuck, god damn it. Yeah, I get it. People are stupid.
Yeah, people don't seem to get this at all. Like, it's all something we're kind of suffering through together, but we're making it work. The most important thing is that you and I can keep doing this podcast, because if there was anything the world is clamoring for, it was more of the two of us talking bullshit all the time.
Exactly. It was more of us living in the past, talking about shows that are 16 years old.
I know, right? And trying to find ways to make them still relevant or to adjust their relevance, which we'll get into a little bit.
This episode specifically is probably the most relevant episode of any Static Shock episode. I dare say even more relevant than Static Shack.
I mean, how could anything be more relevant than Static Shack? Obviously, Shack being just the paragon of pop culture awareness these days.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, it's funny because this is an episode that's both incredibly relevant and also in some ways tragically dated. And I'll get into that a little bit. Because we are dealing with the very special episode this week. And I say that and it almost sounds a little like dismissive, but it actually is like a really important episode. It's Jimmy. Which is the season 2 finale that follows in the same vein of like was it Sins of the Fathers tackling racism and Frozen Out tackling homelessness, and then this one's dealing with gun violence. And I was not expecting that when I woke up this morning to record, so that was a real fun surprise in this already emotionally tumultuous time. But before we get to that, let's talk about Comic-Con a little bit, because they were kind of one of the last big holdouts of like major events, and it finally got canceled just a few days ago.
It did.
So,
it's very sad, yeah.
Because you were going. I wasn't going to be going this year.
I didn't have tickets this year. I wasn't able to get tickets.
What about through work?
I applied through work, and I never heard anything back from the professional department.
Oh, shit. I was, planning on you being there, because I as of right now, my brother's wedding is that weekend. Whether that keeps or not is up to be seen, but I wasn't going to be going, so I was like, oh, at least Cameron will go. He'll be our man on the scene.
No. So I do think there's... So this is obviously a couple months out. No one knows the state of the world at that point. But I feel like there's something is going to have to happen still. Like it's such a...
Some sort of event is going to have to happen in its place.
Yeah, and it can be a remote event. Like I see them doing something, and then E3 as well doing something big. Not big, quote unquote. But, like E3 has been really pushing the way of where I think cons are moving, where you kind of have these big names doing their own things tangential to the con going on.
Yeah.
So like Sony and Microsoft both have their big press conferences, like the week before E3 now, because they don't want to waste time at the conference.
Or get lost in the shuffle. Yeah.
So they'll announce their stuff a week early and then have some of the stuff to play at the conference, which I think is super smart. And then it also means that no one's competing with Nintendo because they usually win.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, tangent on a tangent here, but I feel like Nintendo probably is the gaming company and console that still innovates the most.
It does. So there's actually a really interesting video that I watched about that, where Nintendo always seems like they're the most inventive because every time they make something, it lands. But what actually is happening is Nintendo is always like 2 years behind everyone else and letting them basically be their R&D department of like, okay, they switch to discs. Let's see if that becomes a thing. CDs become a thing instead of cartridges. And they're like, oh, okay, that was a thing. Okay, so now we're going to make our own CDs.
Yeah.
And I think Nintendo gets a lot of flack for their like multiple controller designs and how they're all just very bizarre. But I mean, if you look at the GameCube really came out of following the PlayStation. Like the controller design is almost the same as the PlayStation controller. The disc is the same. And from then it kind of has just been this kind of rubber banding thing that Nintendo just always seems to win.
Yeah, I guess that's fair because I mean, the Wii came out
2008
around the same time as what was it, PlayStation Move or whatever. I can't remember what the name of their weird wand thingy was.
Yeah. So all three systems had their like their motion control thing.
Yeah, and if anything, Xbox is the most advanced. But
the Kinect, yes, but no one wanted it.
They never really capitalized on the format, and then also Xbox is just terrible. Like I'm actually staring at mine right now, and I'm just staring at it with so much hatred. I hate that console. It's so terrible. It never operates the same way twice.
Yeah,
it's like I desperately want a PlayStation, but like I'm not gonna get one right now. I basically only really want it just so I can play Spider-Man.
I have my PlayStation now as my DVD player.
Yeah, exactly. So, because you and I, like, I mean, you played the Switch, but you and I aren't necessarily huge gamers. Mm-hmm. So,
I'm very dedicated to Animal Crossing right now. I
know a lot of people that are
100 to 200 hours already.
I respect that move so much. I'm so glad you took a break from your Animal Crossing to come and do this. Have they found yet a way to record podcasts inside of Animal Crossing?
No, but I've seen people do like office meetings in Animal Crossing.
I mean, look, I haven't played it at all. I know a little bit about it from what you've explained and my friend Chris have explained. But I have no idea what's going on. But it seems like this weird like proxy for real life that is at the moment better than real life because you could actually interact with people.
Yeah, and it's better than people because they're animals.
I mean, that's fair. We all wish we lived in I was gonna say the Zootopia world, but like the Zootopia world is still kind of like bleak and depressing.
It's pretty racist,
it's pretty because it has like actual genuine like racism in it. So why don't we instead say we all want to live inside the Robin Hood cinematic universe? Which wait, hang on. That apparently is getting a quote unquote live action remake as well.
Yeah.
I'm just really excited for the renewed conversation about whether it's okay to find Robin Hood sexually attractive, which I admit I do.
I find it so interesting, the argument, because like the question of Robin Hood being attractive is like, is this okay? But then you have like Lola Bunny on the other side. It's like, no, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I get that she was way more sexualized than Robin Hood was. But I feel like you can't choose just one. Like you either have to have both or neither.
You kind of accept the fact that you're sexually attracted to an anthropomorphized animal cartoon and just move on from it.
Yeah. You know, it's okay. We don't have to have a stigma around it.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's only weird if we say it's weird.
Exactly.
If we are all just in agreement on it, then it's totally fine.
Then it's normalized.
But I do know what you mean about, I think they should do something. I mean, and we're seeing little bits of this pop up. Like, I know next weekend there's this thing called Stay Home Comic-Con, which I don't really know too much about. And then, like, we did our own version of At Home Comic-Con yesterday, doing a live script read of Legends of the Dark Knight episode with the Watchtower database, which was super fun. And I will put that video link in the show notes, and then I'm going to see if I can find a way to pull the audio and make a bonus episode for us, but that's to be determined on my audio editing skills. But we're seeing little things like that pop up. So do you think E3 and San Diego Comic-Con are going to do some sort of virtual Comic-Con presence?
Oh, absolutely. I think we're going to have that. I think, like we can do digital panels. Like that's a totally doable thing. Call up the Big Bang Theory cast and crew.
What are they doing other than just sleeping on massive beds of money at this point?
Like that's a very attainable thing to do.
Well, I mean, you can live stream now to YouTube. Twitch is a huge platform at this point.
Well, I think I don't know if you saw this online. I assume it's going to get more publicity tonight when his episode comes out. But John Krasinski did At Home Prom on Friday.
Oh, did he?
Through his new network, Some Good News. Yeah. Which I think is probably the best thing that's come out of the quarantine so far. Like those videos are so wholesome.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
But yeah, he did a YouTube live of At Home Prom where he had like the Jonas Brothers come on and sing their song, and then like Billie Eilish came on and sang one of her songs.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, that's fucking awesome.
That is really, really sweet. Like a nice little dose of positivity.
Yeah.
I think they could still do something. I mean, it wouldn't have the same effect as like being in the room when big panels happen, when big announcements happen. Like, I've been lucky enough to have that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But then also just like the headache that it is to, one, get to Comic-Con, and then two, to get into those panels is so much so that you and I have both kind of abandoned doing it, as I think a lot of other people have.
Yeah.
So at this point, a lot of that news is picked up online anyways. So, I mean, they could easily do like, set up a Twitch stream for the day where they have like different Twitch rooms representing different halls, and they could do more or less those same kind of panels and have those same kind of announcements. And it would, I think, broadly speaking, have a lot of the same sort of like news spread and cultural impact that it does now. It just wouldn't be the same for those people in the room.
Yeah. I do like that idea of making it a digital, like a literal digital space where they can kind of craft their own website, and you can just like, it'll just be the map of Comic-Con, and you can click on the room and it'll lead you to a unique Twitch. Because there's another charity stream that happens twice a year called Awesome Games Done Quick, which is a speed running charity service where they kind of bring 200 of the best speedrunners in the world, video game speedrunners in the world, to just like show off how good they are at their game. And they'll have like 4 or 5 concurrent runs going on at a time, and it's a 24-hour stream, or sorry, a full day stream for 4 days.
Yeah.
It's like, I definitely think they can learn from that on how to potentially do this bigger.
And that's a really cool way to visualize as well. Like you said, like have a proxy of the map, and you're like, oh, like I know what's happening in Hall H right now. Let me go check in on Hall H or Ballroom 20, or even you could still do a lot of the marketplace stuff too. It's like, oh, like let me go do like a virtual walkthrough of the artist gallery. Sort of thing. And you could just kind of like scroll through, or you can search for your favorite artists, and they have the auction going on too. Like there's a way to do versions of this online that I think could still work really, really well. And they have time. That's the thing. They have time to figure this stuff out.
Because WonderCon just happened.
Yeah, exactly. WonderCon would have been last weekend.
And they kind of did it okay, because they focus on something that I'm very curious on how Comic-Con's going to work on, is the merchandise standpoint.
Yeah.
Of like Funko did their own, like Funko had FunkoCon a couple weeks ago.
And they still had like online waiting rooms to buy exclusives, right? Yeah, because our friend Jeb got a couple of the Funkos. He was super excited about that.
Yeah, they had some fun Scott Pilgrim ones and Speed Racer ones.
Did you get any of them?
I didn't. I forgot.
Why not?
I forgot what was going on.
You have the time.
I know.
You could be in an online waiting room and play Animal Crossing at the same time.
That's very true. I can wait.
Yeah.
I can be in the waiting room in Animal Crossing.
Yeah. Someone probably built out a room for everyone else who's hanging out there waiting for Funko Pops.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like, because so many businesses like make their money through Comic-Con.
Yeah.
When you lose that market, that's hard to recover from. I'm very curious of just like what San Diego is going to be like without Comic-Con, because like so much of their yearly revenue comes from the event.
Yeah, I mean, and I think San Diego in general is a big convention town. I mean, that convention center is huge. It's really nice too. I mean, for those who haven't been, it's actually like a really beautiful, really well laid out convention center, and it's kind of ideally placed right by the gas lamp, and there's lots of great bars and restaurants and stuff. And
it's incredibly close to the airport.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's sunny all the time.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the only place that has better weather than LA. And it's, I think, big for them in general, having all those conventions come into town, but nothing's quite like Comic-Con. I mean, I think it's fair to say there's probably a lot of businesses down there that they account for a huge part of their annual revenue to come from that. And obviously we're seeing that play out across the world right now. But yeah, I think San Diego in particular is going to get hit hard. And I wonder if that's maybe part of the reason there was such a holdout for a long time on that. is that maybe San Diego was really trying to keep it going there. And probably a lot of the studios wanted to keep it because they needed some sort of like reinvigoration to happen for them after this lull, and they're hoping that could be it. But
yeah. And I've had a few conversations with people that know this better than I do. There's also some like, for tax purposes, you can't announce a closure until like a certain number of days out.
Yeah, I think that, in terms of like refunds. And
which is why WonderCon waited because WonderCon held out almost until like a week before the con, or like 2 weeks before the con.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
They were very late to announce it was canceled.
Yeah, it probably has something to do with like their whatever like force majeure clause they have in their insurance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not something I'm super familiar with necessarily. But
yeah, so I'm very curious because there's also the whole cosplay community and how they're going to react to this. Because connected to that, today is Dapper Day. Today is the day I would be at the park in my Sunday best.
Do they have some sort of like online Dapper Day thing happening?
Not really. Everyone's kind of just posting their stuff on Instagram right now, and I'm sure like still I haven't looked at any stories yet, but I'm sure people are kind of like reminiscing on the memories.
Wait, what was your Dapper Day costume to have been?
I did not plan anything.
Oh, because you're like, it's not going to happen, so fuck it.
Yeah, pretty much once they closed Disney, I'm like, this isn't going to happen now.
No, it's definitely not happening anymore. Well, hopefully it's reopened come November and you can do that Dapper Day.
Yeah.
And go full out. All right, shall we get into our episode of the week? Because it's just the one.
Let's do it.
Okay, so this week we are talking about Jimmy, which, as we mentioned, is like the PSA, we'll call it, episode of Static Shock that addresses gun violence. Now, we've had a few others within Static. We've had other ones in Batman Animated Series where they had a very strong stance on the possibilities of trains. And,
I think before this, trains was probably the biggest push PSA. Don't run on train tracks, kids.
I mean, don't run on train tracks was a big one.
Don't play around train tracks.
Don't play around.
Don't ride on the top of trains.
Another episode was all about how don't get captured by an underground sewer king. Yeah,
that's a very important PSA.
I mean, there were a lot of episodes advocating the value of having both rivers and bonsai trees in the middle of your city in the event you fall from a blimp.
Mm-hmm.
Very important stuff.
Plant bushes everywhere. They can save lives.
Plant like real thick, spongy bushes everywhere you possibly can, just be on the safe side. But
lots of small, like perfect sized pools that fit one person.
Yes. Yeah, and have really good aim while you're falling.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've talked about before that I think Static was making an effort to be a little more grounded in reality than some of the other shows, which isn't surprising because, Batman was always set in this sort of weird anytime timeline and it was always a little bit heightened comic booky, and obviously Superman and Batman Beyond and Zeta are all sort of sci-fi stuff, and Static, by comparison, is the most grounded. I mean, it's the only show of all of them that has actual real life people show up, as we saw in our last episode with the great double bill of AJ McLean and Coolio. But it also made an effort to actually have something real to say and to be a little bit more on the nose about it. And this episode, Jimmy jumps right into it. I mean, the cold open is Richie getting taken out on a stretcher going into ambulance, and Virgil and Mr. Hawkins both in absolute panic about it. And if you know what the episode's about, you kind of get where it's going. But it would be a pretty shocking way to start an episode if you were a kid.
Yeah, and I think it had the PSA up front of like, this is not, this may not be suitable for all audiences.
Oh, okay. If it did, it wasn't on the DC Universe version, and I didn't see anything about it. But I wouldn't be surprised if they had some sort of thing, because as we'll get into later in this episode, this was kind of a trope of like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s was these like very special episode things, which were these kind of tonal shifts to talk about something a little more real. And I think Static does a pretty good job with them in general.
Yeah, there's the three you mentioned, and there's one more coming next season.
Okay. Also, I mean, kind of a bold choice to have as the season finale.
Yeah. So I was talking to my friend Dylan last night. We were talking about this episode because we both remember it very, very well. And we remembered that this was probably the most syndicated episode. Like I
Really?
remember seeing this episode constantly on WB and on Cartoon Network. And so like this, like not only was it a good, important message, but it's one that like they wanted to share as much as possible.
That's so interesting because I mean, I know the kind of like cynical side of a lot of these like very special episodes was basically trying to get like award recognition and like kind of group recognition. I think this episode, in fact, actually did get. Let me
Yeah,
look it
it
up
won
here.
a Humanita Prize.
Okay, yeah. I mean, because it's pretty raw in its addressing of gun violence,
Yeah,
and
there's almost no comedy in this episode.
no, not really. I mean, there's kind of after we get the cold open and we then go into the beginning of the flashbacks, and or I guess it's the cold open and then the framing device. The whole thing is Virgil talking with a psychologist about kind of the trauma of the actual attack itself, and there's a brief flashback to him fighting
Carmandillo.
Carmen. Thank you, thank you. I always want to call him Armadillo
Armadillon.
now, and I
Yeah.
can't remember which one is the real name and which one's the stupid name we made up for him. But like, outside of that, I mean, that's what the only time Static is in costume, I guess, except for the very, very end.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
otherwise,
It's a full Virgil episode.
yeah, I mean, and so the plot of it is that there's this kid at their school, Jimmy, who's kind of a loner, kind of an outsider, keeps himself, and he keeps getting picked on by this very prototypical bully named Nick, who I guess won an award the previous year for best personality. He certainly did not win it for best hair.
No, because he's a 1960s greaser.
Yeah, he totally is a greaser. It's like very out of place. And if I had a slight quibble with the episode, it's that their version of bullying felt very stereotypical. But I also can see why they would do that, because you're kind of having to hit some of those really familiar like high school bullying tropes to just get that aspect of the message across.
Well, I was going to say it felt like middle school bullying. Like this is the stuff that I remember being picked on. Like as, getting kind of pushed around a little bit, kind of just like, it's like the small things.
It's like
just
nettling.
Like, yeah. That like turn you over time of just, like pushing something off your desk, messing with your computer.
Yeah, calling them names. Like it was very kind of basic in their portrayal of bullying, but it does get the idea across. This kid is like just kind of an outsider, and really has a terrible time going to school. So Virgil
and also doesn't want to speak up for himself.
Yeah, doesn't want to speak up for himself.
A big part. And I'm surprised that wasn't the end button. Was
like about how to like speak up for yourself a little bit.
Yeah, because kind of Virgil doesn't like, he says he learns a lesson, but you don't see him really change at all in that last little moment.
I think overall it's very effective. I think it's a little bit muddled in his messaging. I think
because they say it a lot in the episode of Virgil regretting, like, I wish I would have said something. I wish I would have done something. I wish I would have, acted more responsibly. Like, why didn't I talk to the teacher? Why didn't I tell my dad there was a gun there? Why didn't I tell his dad that he had access to the gun?
Yeah. I think overall that's like the main message they're going for, and there's an actual at the end of the episode, like a fourth wall breaking direct address to the audience. That's kind of the big takeaway from it. It's kind of like, to use like modern phrasing, like if you see something, say something, is kind of its overall messaging. And I think that in combination with like highlighting the potential dangers of bullying, and I'm glad that they definitely tried to flesh out Nick or Jimmy's kind of reasoning for choosing to take a gun to school. Actually, it wasn't the school even, was it? It was the community center.
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge of watching this episode now is that it has a very different context now. In some ways. So, because when did this episode air? This was
2003, I want to say.
May 4th, 2002.
Okay. 18 years ago.
Yeah. And so I wasn't expecting to do this today. I did a bit of a dive on just like kind of a little bit of the history of shootings. And also, I swear to God, guys, this will eventually turn back to like more lighter fare where
Yeah.
this is not the best place to necessarily have like a
This
nuanced
is the very
conversation
special
about
episode
this.
of Timm Talk.
Yeah, this is not going to be a repeat of the very heavy Joker episode. We'll just want to talk about a few things along these lines. But so this is post Columbine, which was obviously kind of like a big moment. But I think it's fair to say like the prevalence of shootings and the number of victims from each one has increased a lot. And it's almost like this episode in hindsight now seems almost like a little too simple in its portrayal because it's so much more heightened and extreme now than it was even back then.
Mm-hmm. Well, when it gets to the part where they're reading his manifesto, I was getting like major flashbacks to what's the Netflix show that everyone started hating?
Oh, 13 Reasons Why.
13 Reasons Why. Yeah. And especially like when they corner him in because I think it's season 2. At the end of season 2 is when the kid brings, he's going to do a shooting at the prom.
Yeah, because I watched season 1 and they like start alluding to that at the end of season 1 to set up a second season, but I didn't watch season 2.
Yeah, so they're like, I was getting major flashbacks to that, and like that was such an uncomfortable moment for me just to watch that. And obviously you have that duality of doing this live action versus doing this animated. It's a different feeling.
Yeah, this makes it feel a little bit more detached.
Yeah,
but I mean, it hits a lot of the sort of elements that we see in a lot of these situations. Like Jimmy is kind of a loner. He's just kind of outside society a little bit.
Even there's one line that really irked me, but it's so important that not even at home is he safe. Because there's a
little bit
because there's a moment where Virgil and Richie go and visit Jimmy at his house,
trying to like be friendly and try and like cheer him up and be supportive.
Yeah, and his mom is leaving as they come in, and she kind of leans into Jimmy. It's like trying not to chase these two away too.
Yeah,
and I'm like, are you kidding? Like that's so emotionally manipulative.
It is, and I mean, it's a hard moment to watch, but I'm also glad they included it because it does go to show like that sort of mentality.
It's like he's isolated everywhere. Like he has no safe place.
No, nothing. And they even acknowledge like this guy then kind of like gets overly invested in fiction and sci-fi and tends to gravitate towards like the violence in a lot of that, which we do see a little bit of otherwise. And even his his sort of infatuation with Frida, they kind of acknowledge like that's a contributing factor of like someone is all of a sudden nice to him and he misconstrues that. And I think it's relevant because I feel like every adolescent has that happen at a few points.
Oh, that felt the most real of kind of anything in this episode was him kind of breaking down after hearing Frida talk bad about him. Not even bad about him, but
she
matching
just said, like,
his emotion.
Yeah, she was like, she more or less just like says, oh no, he's like just a friend.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But you can understand why that's devastating for the character. And it's good that they incorporate these little things to try and flesh Jimmy out and make him a little more sympathetic. But I don't know. It's weird too, because I think some of the characteristics of Jimmy apply to a lot of kind of like nerd culture in general and like the kids that are watching these sort of cartoons. So I guess in one sense, like it helps to make that character relatable to your audience to try and maybe like have the messaging land. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Do you find it's effective in doing that?
I think it shows, because on your point, it is interesting that like Jimmy kind of is us.
Yeah.
But the show isn't from that perspective. It would be from, your friend's perspective. And so it doesn't help like you as the nerd deal with these emotions. Like you're not the one getting bullied. You're not the one getting rejected. So it doesn't go into like, how should you handle the situation? It's basically saying, just don't let the situation happen in the first place without giving an alternative.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess maybe that's the part of it that like didn't quite land for me is I'm glad that it addresses a problem, but it doesn't necessarily seem to have a lot of answers, but also there aren't really good answers.
Yeah,
this
yeah. I
in a
do.
lot of ways.
There's one line that I think is a little ham-fisted in this episode, and it's when the gun is first brought up. I think there could have been a smoother way for that to happen.
Like when because he's like holding that ray gun, and then he's like, "Oh, you want to see a real gun?" And Virgil then freaks out, understandably.
Yeah, so
His
I mean,
mom was
Virgil's
killed.
reaction is the understandable one, but I feel like that isn't how Jimmy's character would have approached the situation, because he's been very shy this whole time. But I guess, and then like, playing devil's advocate to my own point, there is this idea of when you have new people coming in, there's like not the power displacement, but the need to please.
Yeah, and the
power
show
is
off.
an easy thing, to please people with.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of this stems from. This episode addresses it. It's like it's a lack of power, it's a lack of control, and so you tend to gravitate towards unhealthy sometimes displays and symbols of power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do just wish that felt a little more organic, where like, Richie's holding the ray gun, they're kind of having these conversations, and Jimmy, needs to get something from a drawer and opens it up, and they either see the gun or they see bullets. Yeah. And they're like, oh, what are you doing with that? And then you can kind of lead into the same thing where Virgil kind of flips out. He's like, whoa, I don't want, we got to get out of here. I don't like seeing that. He's like, oh, no, it's my dad's. I'm trying to think of like how you kind of bring it up without it still feeling ham-fisted, but some kind of idea of like, after dealing with those guys, I come home and I just feel strong holding it.
Yeah, maybe something a little bit more pointed.
Yeah. And then you can kind of continue the story as it plays.
Yeah, because for the most part, the rest of it plays out pretty well. Like I think having the voiceover narration, the whole thing as it's told in flashback, works well. Basically the rest of the plot is that Virgil and Richie are trying to really make Jimmy's life a little bit better. They invite him to help Frida decorate up the community center for this like Halloween Fright Fest sort of thing. And he's really good at it. Like he knows how to create like really cool illusions. And all of a sudden he finds a place where he's feeling accepted and utilized. And he actually has like positive influence. And then that kind of all comes crashing down when like Nick shows up and kind of harasses him at the Fright Fest itself. And then I think for me, the moment that felt the most cliched was when he gets shoved into a locker.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like the classic trope. I mean, I don't know if that ever happening to anyone when I was in high school or middle school, but then also like the lockers weren't tall enough to fit a person. Maybe deliberately.
I was going to say like in my high school, it was more of like you tried to fit in your locker because we had the half size ones. It was the double stack. Like that was like an attempted thing.
That felt like little on the nose, but also like that's a hard scene to watch. Like he's trapped in there.
It's his breaking point, and you hear like the emotional scream.
Yeah, and you know where it's going too. It has like that extra just like pang that what's going to happen now as a result of this, and so basically, Virgil feels like really bad about what happens, and so he's with his dad, and they decide they're going to stop by and see if Jimmy's available. They'll pick him up on the way to the Fright Fest, and then they discover that not only is Jimmy gone, but his dad's gun is gone as well, and they figure out what's happening. And I think one of the other great moments in this, and it goes to show just what an incredible character Mr. Hawkins is, but like he immediately goes into like crisis management mode, and he tells Virgil like, go home, like you're not coming with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we get down there, and Jimmy pulls the gun, and Richie's kind of able to defuse the situation more or less, but then Nick's goons essentially like go to tackle him as the gun goes off, and Richie gets shot in the leg. And I thought even the way they handled that was done pretty well. Like because it's a kid's cartoon, obviously they don't show blood, they don't show a gunshot wound or even like a hole in his clothes, anything like that. But just the thing that Richard keeps saying is like, oh, it actually hurts. It's not like what you expect it's not like they show on TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it's not something you get up from.
Yeah, again, trying to like emphasize the reality of it. I also thought it was really interesting that's the character they chose to get shot. Like I guess they decided they needed to have someone really important to the audience to have it happen to.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think Richie is the plausible choice, because it can't be any of the bullies, because then then that's the wrong message.
Yeah, because this is more trying to acknowledge just like the collateral damage.
Oh, what if it was Mr. Hawkins?
Oh,
I think that would have been so emotional. I mean, like, that's something that Virgil would like never recoup from.
my heart just broke by you just saying that.
Yeah.
It's the one responsible, like, good parent we have in the entire DCAU. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It's interesting they didn't choose him. Maybe they felt like it would have been a bit too close to what happened to his mom.
And no, I think it had to be Richie, because like there's no interaction between Mr. Hawkins and Jimmy before then. So like, it would mean a lot to the audience and it would mean a lot to Virgil, but it wouldn't mean anything to Jimmy that he just basically shot this bystander.
Yeah, and some like the one or two people had actually been like trying to help him and to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like a really intense episode and kind of not what I was expecting of this Sunday morning.
So there's one other aspect of this episode that I find very fascinating, and it's the fact that Virgil never used his powers to try and help. And we see in past episodes that like Virgil's always stands up for the little guy, and he's always does like little pranks on the bullies where he'll melt the soles of their shoes as they're walking, or make them drop something, or make something hit them in the face. Very like comical things. And I was expecting that through this whole episode of making some kind of power shift in, when what's his name, Tony.
Nick.
I'm going to call him
kind of a Tony.
He's a Tony.
He's a total Tony.
When Tony is like messing with him, I was expecting, Virgil to like electrocute the chair and make it like fall under him, or something where Jimmy isn't the butt of the joke anymore. But I think it's very smart of them not to do it, because now it is such a human episode of like all of this is so plausible, and you can't rely on, external powers to be the cure-all.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because they deliberately remove Static's power element from the whole thing. It's like, one, he arrives too late to have like stopped the gun from going off. Like the only thing he does is he like magnetizes the gun so it sticks to the ceiling so no one can get to it. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. Like if they had written the episode in such a way that his powers played out in any way, like even if he like when they're at the table in the beginning, even if he had like zapped the table just to like zap Nick when he was trying to push the laptop or something like that, it would have been like, oh well, here's how you deal with it if you have superpowers, but how does that help anyone who's actually watching it?
Yeah,
like if you're gonna go for a real world message, you can't have it get resolved with superpowers. And so I agree with you. I'm glad they chose to avoid that.
Yeah,
instead. Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, Static does a really good job with these kind of episodes.
Yeah, and I do believe this is probably the best, special / PSA episode I think that maybe ever been made.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, it has complexity and nuance as much as you can for a 23-minute episode that is from almost 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would do something like this in a modern context, and I also don't really know of any shows that try to address that. I think you maybe keep up in touch with like more contemporary, like younger audience material than I do, but like I don't know of anything that exists out there.
You calling me a child?
I'm saying you're a child at heart, Cameron, and you embrace your inner child, and you watch what you want to watch. So I mean, that sounded so belittling.
Politician.
I know, trying to go for like the most diplomatic response possible. Do you know of anything contemporary that tries to address this at all that's aimed at kids?
Not something this serious.
Yeah,
because obviously, like nowadays, teenage shooting is much worse than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, when we were in school, I remember doing the occasional like lockdown drill.
Yeah, we did one lockdown in middle school and one in high school.
But they were few and far between. Like there wasn't like a whole robust policy in place. It wasn't something we practiced all the time. And from what I've heard, I think that's actually pretty common these days now.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had one scare in middle school because there was some like violence reported, it's like a mile or two from my middle school. And so we went into lockdown. But there was no fear. It wasn't this, it wasn't the same fear expectation you would have now. It was everyone's
like a
kind
precaution.
Everyone's kind of sitting in silence. I mean, not even silence. Like people are cracking jokes and scooting under. It's the scene from fucking 8th grade.
Oh
like
that
was
God.
almost exactly what happened with us. Like no one took it seriously. People like joking around
on their phones.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I forgot about that scene in 8th grade. Holy shit. God, that is an incredible but painful watch, that movie.
Yeah.
It's like painful in the best way possible. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought this episode does a really good job with it. Any other thoughts on the episode itself, or should we talk about some other very special episodes? I think you and I both did some research on this.
We did. I do. What was talking about like the punishment for each person, and kind of like the muddled, not really happy ending of this episode, where Jimmy, the one who's been bullied this whole time and does make the mistake of firing a gun, is sent to juvie, whereas the guy who's bullying him and pushed him to that point is just suspended with his friends.
Yeah.
It's not a really uplifting ending. And then, of course, the as you brought up, the breaking the fourth wall moment.
Yeah.
With Static and us.
Now, do you feel, though, like do you think kids watching this would be able to recognize the lack of justice in the outcome? To be able to look at that and go like this, or maybe not be able to phrase it that way, but look at it and go like, oh, it seems super unfair that like the sympathetic kid has had his entire life ruined, and the guy who really like not caused all of this, but really, precipitated the outcome.
Yeah, who we don't even know as an audience member learned a lesson or not.
Sorry?
Like we as the audience don't even know if Tony even learned a lesson from any of this.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I guess we don't know. So I don't know. I mean, I think, kids are smart. They might be able to pick up on that sense of like, this seems really unfair, that this is how it played out. But you're right. I mean, there's no real noticeable consequence on the part of the bullies. And I mean, I think that in of itself is also true of real life as well. Which kind of sucks. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about other PSAs.
Let's talk about some other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, because this was like a definite trope that was happening, like we said before, kind of starting off in the 70s, really taking root in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, to the point where it eventually got kind of phased out because it became a bit of a punchline. But you and
we found a list of all the cartoon ones specifically, and probably half the ones mentioned were parodies of other special episodes.
So I think I'll actually put this down in the show notes, links to tvtropes.com, which we've gone to a number of times to kind of get a little more research, but they have a whole page dedicated to very special episodes for live action TV and also for Western animation. And so I kind of looked through both of them, and there were definitely patterns emerging looking through all of it. We found that like eating disorders were really big ones.
Oh, that was a hot topic in the 90s and 2000s. And you had a good point on that.
Which is, I think it's kind of a safe topic. Like something like this, which is, dealing with like a really intense, very heavily consequential problem with a lot of collateral damage in terms of gun violence.
And political.
It's hard.
Like it's a very political moment.
Well, and I think part of the sad thing is like it shouldn't be political, and I think that's part of the thing is when this episode came out, it wasn't politicized, and now it is politicized in this really, really like toxic, frustrating way, as many things are. We won't get into it, but you can definitely draw parallels to that, and even like what's going on with COVID in the news right now. But I think the difference is like something like that is really hard to do, and like even this episode, which I think is about as well you can, like pretty much the best version you can of doing this, obviously has holes in terms of how you get the messaging across, whereas something like an eating disorder was a common one. Bullying in general without necessarily like the gun element included was a big one. Drinking, cigarettes, and marijuana.
Oh, marijuana. I think marijuana has some of the funniest ham-fisted episode, because the one that popped in my mind was the Saved by the Bell, where it was
the caffeine pills.
No, the marijuana one.
Oh, I didn't know about the marijuana one.
Yeah, so there's like an actor that comes into their school, and they're filming a music. Or no, it's a singer. They're filming a music video in their school, And obviously the gang gets chosen to be all background characters in the music video.
Of course.
And they call cut. The actor and Zach kind of go to the side, and they're like, yeah, man, it's hard being a musician. You got to deal with all this shit. It's like, but I got one thing that takes the edge off. And it's like the very typical like zoom into the joint. It's like, is that a joint? It's like, yeah, man, it really helps.
Is that grass?
Yeah.
Is that marijuana?
And I'm like, oh no. It's so like, some of them are so bad.
I mean, they are, and like it was definitely like a campaign that was going on at that time to like really stigmatize marijuana use, which luckily we've started to push back against now. And like, I mean, I don't even smoke, like it's not my thing. But I don't really give a shit about people who do. And like,
well, I think
it's probably better than drinking, which is my vice of choice.
The Saved by the Bell one specifically, I remember being so funny because the head of NBC at the time is the fourth wall break at the end of the episode.
Oh, really?
Is the head of NBC
God.
is on the Saved by the Bell set. And he's like, I just want to tell you that marijuana is bad.
Yeah, it definitely, like, I am not super familiar with the intersection of like marijuana stigmatization and criminalization and like broader issues about criminal and justice reform. I'm just not super well versed in that topic, so I don't have a lot of nuanced things to say about it. But like, I think there's definitely a correlation there. Like, there's this definite push at that time to try and stigmatize it, which is it's just, in hindsight, it just seems so dumb and so petty. And like cigarettes too was a big part of that. Like, I think you made a reference to it was an Osmosis Jones, right?
Yeah, there's an Ozzy and Drix episode.
I remember that episode.
There was also, when I was doing my research last night, there was a Superman short called "Don't Say Yes to Cigarettes," and it's like the Fleischer style Superman.
Oh my God!
Fighting a nicotine villain.
Love it.
Yeah, it was actually kind of cool because it was the blend of animation and live action. So it was real kids, and it was a nicotine.
Really?
It was the cartoon nicotine villain handing him. I'll try and find the clip again because it was actually
okay.
Pretty
it
well
kind of
animated.
sounds like the American Express Jerry Seinfeld Superman ads.
Yeah.
Was it also voiced by Patrick Warburton?
No, not that I caught.
An under-recognized and underappreciated Superman actor, that one.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you even pointed out that like eating disorders amongst all those, that there was an episode of My Life as a Teenage Robot that addressed that, where it's like, Jenny couldn't get any skinnier because she was a robot. So then like they basically like brought her down to a skeleton.
Yeah. Nickelodeon specifically had so many. I feel like every show that had a female character, a female lead, had an eating disorder episode.
Yeah.
I was going through the list, and even fucking Billy and Mandy had like a female, like a, accepting the female body kind of episode. I'm like, yeah. Mandy, that is so off character for Mandy. Like, she's never been that kind of person.
Right. And I mean, I think there's value to doing that sort of stuff. Because I mean, that is actually still something that's ongoing now, of like issues about a body image and self-confidence. And there's a whole lengthy discussion I won't get into about like that's effects in the gay community, especially, and my God, especially living in West Hollywood, where
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it a little bit this week. With the idea of body image stuff. Since we're now in this age where virality is so tangible.
Oh, good. That's a great phrase.
Thank you. I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been trying to pick the right words.
Oh God, like the grammar nerd in me, like the grammar vocab nerd in me, just like really love that, Cameron. Yeah. Sorry. I just had to give you a little moment of praise.
No, I appreciate that.
Please continue on your point.
I'm trying to sound smart. Sometimes.
Please continue on your virality comment here.
When we're in this world where anyone can go viral with any kind of video, do you think that's going, especially with the younger generation, where like every TikTok, everyone's trying to get on TikTok right now. Do you think that this desire for your 15 minutes will affect, the weight, not the weight, like the general overweight problem of the next generation? Or do you think it'll balance out because while they have this need to look better or desire to look better, they're also the least active generation ever?
I don't know. I have a hard time speaking about it for like Gen Z, just because I'm not one. I can
Those fucking
see
kids.
this Utes. I can see where that could become I think there is something potentially problematic about the idea of like instant virality, and I think our generation suffers from it a little bit too. Um, I I think ultimately what it can possibly do is skews people's perceptions of reality. You know, we see a little bit of this even being acknowledged on Instagram. Like there was that great cartoon someone put out. It was a cartoon or an actual image, but it was like showing this like absolutely gorgeous apple on one side, and it was like, Instagram, and then it, kind of flipped it around, and it was the backside, and the backside of the apple was like just like rotten, eaten out. It's like, oh, the reality behind the image that's put up there. And I think there is an element of that. And again, my POV on it is strongly rooted in the gay community, particularly the West Hollywood gay community, which is sort of tangentially by association kind of connected with general like entertainment perspective in LA. But you do get the skewed sense of reality of like, you like living in West Hollywood, like every dude is ripped as fuck everywhere you go. And that is just not feasible for a lot of people. And it is like really kind of in your face a lot of the time. And you definitely see a lot of people trying to emulate that sort of a tension that comes with being like crazy fit over Instagram, just being like, well, skin sells. And like I fall victim to all the time too. Like I'll be scrolling through my Instagram, which is mostly at this point Legos and thirst traps.
And sometimes Lego thirst traps.
I'm waiting for I'm waiting for that crossover. We got a little bit of it with Lego Masters because there was a couple contestants on there that are very, very hunky, but they have yet to actually post like Lego constructs like in front of them while they're shortlist, which I'm really hoping happens.
Oh, I'm expecting like very. I'm just imagining very, very unpleasant, very painful Lego sex toys.
Oh God. I mean, look, they're getting a lot of smoother rounded elements out there now at this point. You could probably make it work.
Yeah, you can build something.
There's a lot of motors out there. We could find something creative. You know what? Off air, I will do some due diligence to see if I can track this down, just for those who care. But I mean, we do see a little bit of that, like the idea that like, skin cells, and that's the idea is you have to try and, get a attention that way. And it's something that like, because of this podcast, the podcast I have, like I have this like the most minuscule sort of internet presence possible, but like it's something even I become aware of it, or like even fall victim to at a certain point. It's like, oh, like, does this help fit an image? And I have to try and like work my way out of that mentality. And I imagine that it might be even more prevalent in those that are younger than us. But there's also maybe the hope that they are pushing against some of those stereotypes in some ways too. Like they're a little bit more self-aware, a little more open-minded, hopefully. I don't know. I'd be very curious to hear what a Gen Z person's perspective is on that.
Yeah. Because there's one aspect that, as you were talking, I just thought about, and it's the filter. The use of filters of us and the next generation. And like someone posted a video of like TikTok filter. When you make a TikTok video, there's an automatic filter that goes over you.
Jesus.
Which I like didn't even know about. And so that I find interesting. But now there's like sliders and stuff of just as you're recording, there's, the technology is so great now that like it was a girl who was, hair kind of messy in front of her face, no makeup on. And it basically turned her into a tanned, full makeup, like hair back on her head video. It was updating live as she was recording.
Oh my God.
I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's basically like Photoshop happening in real time.
Yeah. And then College Humor did one of my favorite web videos from a couple of years ago of talking. It was like a fake graphic design breakdown of how they did this like great Photoshop picture And it was a girl in a red bikini in front of a beach. And when they're done with the tutorial, you realize that it started off as a pizza. And like manipulated it where like the pepperoni became the bikini. And I'm like, it's so funny. But I'm like, yeah, you can fucking do that. Like you can turn a piece of pizza into a hot girl now.
You can. I mean, that's the thing. It's like anything is possible, and there is a lens. Oh, hi, kitty. Sorry, I got distracted by the neighbor's cat outside my window. Probably hunted gophers. Yeah, like anything can be manipulated in a way to project a certain kind of image, and whether that's realistic or not is part of what makes it tough. And so, yeah, I mean, I can understand why back then you would get a lot of these like eating disorder PSA episodes, because it was a safe and easy and at the same time still valuable thing to talk about. And you know, one of the things I read is that a lot of these sort of episodes phased out over time because it started to become a bit of a punchline. Like there were a lot of episodes on that list that were parodies. Like the Animaniacs did a whole parody episode based exclusively around trying to come up with new PSAs so they could win another Emmy award.
Yeah.
Like that's early too. That would have been in the 90s. Like
that's 92.
They were like early on that trend to try and start poking fun at it. But then, you know, shows came along like The Simpsons, obviously at a certain point start to like parody very special episodes. I think Family Guy has done a lot with that. South Park at this point, like their episodes that are actually trying to say something meaningful are also making fun of people's attitudes towards it in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of like punchline angle, like parody things started to break the trope apart a little bit, as just also like the prevalence of dramedy as a genre. Like at a certain point, you didn't have to have very special episodes because you could have comedies actually say something meaningful without having to do this massive tonal shift.
Right. And then also kind of take it while being serious, but also still injecting that humor in there and like making it a serious topic, but also like, oh, we're not like super serious about it. Like you should think about it, but not like, you know, like think about it.
I think one of the best examples out there is Blackish, which is a really, really great show.
Yeah.
And they've tackled a number of like pretty heavy things and still made them like really funny episodes. I mean, one of the ones that came to mind is they did an episode all about like the Black Lives Matter movement. And actually, I heard about that episode and made me start watching the show just so I could watch that episode. And it's a great episode of TV. Like, it's genuinely really heartfelt and really nuanced and has a lot to say, but it's also still really funny because it's just like really great writers and really talented cast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that makes it so that you can actually say really meaningful things while still being fun and entertaining and not having to like be like, hey, here's a warning. This episode won't be any fun at all.
Do you have a list? Do you want to just kind of jump through a couple of your top rated ones?
I only wrote down one, which was the most ridiculous one I could find, and I'll save that to the end. I think you probably have a few good ones you want to reference. So
yeah, I have one that is also kind of over the top. Mm-hmm. But I think some of the best ones, for me, I think Fresh Prince had the two best PSAs.
There's some really good ones, yeah.
There's the one where Carlton overdoses on speed pills and has to get his stomach pumped.
Oh, God.
And they're Will's pills.
Uh-huh.
So like Will feels extra bad about it. And then there's the one where Will gets shot and Carlton buys a gun as like a retaliation method.
Oh, fuck.
Like those two are huge. And then there was like, you know, there was a handful of racist themed episodes. Mm-hmm. You know, there's the one where Will and Carlton are sent to jail because they're driving a nice car in an area that they like quote unquote shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. And, you know, dealing with that kind of situation. But no, those two I think are huge episodes.
The only I haven't really watched a lot of Fresh Prince, but the one French Prince, which is a totally different episode. Yes, so many baguettes. The one that comes to mind, which I've only seen the clip of, is I'm trying to remember the exact plot of the episodes. But basically, like in the episode itself, Will's character, like his dad, who kind of like walked out and like comes back, and like Will as a character comes to realize like his dad doesn't love him. And what I've heard about that episode is that like that. I think that actually happened to Will Smith as like the person.
Yeah.
And so that moment when he has a full breakdown on screen was like real. And the reaction from his uncle, like that was just the other actor like responding to this person he cared about, like having this real moment, which is I mean genuinely like I mean heartbreaking in the episode itself and, you know, the context too, it's just like adds that much more poignancy to it. But
yeah, that episode is very hard to watch. It's a great episode.
yeah.
But yeah, like that, I cried when I first watched that episode.
I'm getting emotional just like talking about it right now.
Some other ones that have some really good PSAs. That's So Raven actually had a really good fighting racism PSA. Because it was Raven and Chelsea, the best friend, applied to work at the same boutique store. That's repetitive. At the same boutique.
They stopped by an ATM machine to draw some cash first on the way. Yeah.
Some cash money.
Yeah.
And Chelsea like kind of messes up her interview process and her like kind of quote unquote her like audition process, but still gets the job over Raven. And Raven has a vision where she learns that she didn't get the job because they don't hire black people.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah.
Wait, does Raven have psychic powers?
Have you never seen That's So Raven?
I've never seen That's So Raven.
The whole premise is Raven can see the future.
I thought
the theme
it was a whole
song is when you gaze to the future, you think life would be a breeze.
I've never seen the show. I thought it was all just based around like, you know, like Raven Simone, who has this incredible personality, like a really good person around which to build a sitcom, like you do with every other like comedy star of the 90s. And they go the whole thing. I thought that's what it was about, unless she was a psychic.
No, yeah, she's a psychic.
What? All right. You learn something new every day.
Yeah. And then two more, you know, Captain Planet is kind of a show about PSA. Like the whole show
premise.
It's just a great special episode.
Yeah.
And then kind of coming a little more current, there was a Teen Titans episode, I think in like season 4, where we learn Starfire's race, the Tamaranians, are kind of treated as like second-class citizens in the galaxy. And there's a new alien that comes to Earth named Trock.
Is it Torque?
Torque, yeah. Who is just like consistently belittling Starfire. And there's like a really, really heartwarming moment, but not heartwarming, special moment between Starfire and Cyborg, where they kind of bond over this like being judged by your appearance kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he has like a great monologue about like before, you know, like people give me weird looks now because I'm a cyborg. But even before that, I got a lot of weird looks just because I was a black kid.
Yeah. God damn. I think it's amazing that a lot of these shows are able to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like I know it said a super political when I accused you of watching children's programming accurately. But I mean, I think that is ultimately the power of making content for kids is like you actually have an opportunity to say something really meaningful and to maybe shift perspective a little bit and to broaden their worlds in a lot of ways too. And, you know, these shows serve as a great, you know, allegories for like real world problems. And, you know, sometimes going super on the nose with them the way this episode did is helpful, but sometimes making a little more oblique can help get the messaging across.
Yeah. So I have one more that lines up great with what you just said, where it focuses less on kind of like the bigger PSA and it's kind of the inner special moment.
Yeah.
But Big Mouth actually has a lot of really, really good PSA like songs and episodes.
I've heard that Big Mouth is great. I need to watch at some point because it's totally my wheelhouse of comedy.
It's very like up and down. But there's some like there's a whole song or there's a whole episode about like, am I gay? And like, how do I kind of go about dealing with that?
Yeah.
There's a great song called Girls Are Horny Too. You know, kind of trying to break the stereotype of like only guys can, you know, like it's only okay for guys to be aroused.
Yeah.
And then another song. This one was funny because it's the opening number. Like this, you start the episode, and it's a song about how to have a female orgasm.
My God, that's so amazing.
And I'm like, they're not pulling any punches on this show.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Like, put it out there. Like,
yeah, and these are like obvious things that like need to be said now.
No, I mean there's you know a whole discussion we made about the fact that you know like female sexuality not from a male perspective, and then also yeah, like question your own sexual identity. Like those are things that just didn't exist like when we were kids. Like they didn't exist in cartoons and
Yeah,
in
and
like
that's still a
shows.
joke that I hear. Is like, what's more fictional, unicorns or female orgasm?
Oh my God, I know. It's so stupid. You know, everyone gets thirsty and
Yeah,
some don't. And that's great too.
yeah, and that's there's a whole episode about like pansexuals too,
Yeah.
and like just like going over the full spectrum. And I'm like,
Yeah. I mean,
fucking
cause
good
it
on
is.
you, Nick Kroll.
Yeah. No, I mean, look,
That's not
I
the
love Nick
voice of
Kroll.
the generation I was expecting.
Yeah, exactly. It's John Mulaney too, right? Isn't
Yeah,
Kroll,
it's Nick Kroll, John
Yeah.
Mulaney, and then who's they Jenny Slate voices. I don't think she writes.
Oh my God, I love Jenny Slate.
Yeah.
No, it's great. No, it's in a totally different vein. The only episode I wrote down was the most ridiculous one I could possibly find. And it was from Punky Brewster, a show that I basically know nothing about. But they had an episode called Cherry Lifesaver, where one of the kids learned how to do CPR.
Yes.
And the climactic moment where it actually became relevant was one of their friends trapped themselves inside an old abandoned refrigerator, and like they opened it and she was unconscious. They had to give her CPR to resuscitate her. And I just thought it was, I mean, so funny because that's not a thing now. Like they even made a comment in the article I was reading about how at a certain point in the 90s, like all refrigerators were built so that you could open them from the inside, so this wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But like that was a real thing that used to be like an actual genuine problem, which is so funny.
Yeah.
Wait, did you know that was actually part of the original story for Back to the Future?
I didn't.
Yeah, before it was the DeLorean, one of the early drafts had Marty going inside a refrigerator, and then like it involved a nuclear blast. Like that's part of how he ended up going back in time. And the part of the reason they scrapped it was they didn't want kids getting trapped inside refrigerators.
That's fair.
But don't worry, Spielberg kept that idea and used it later in a very disastrous way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that covers this very special segment of very special episodes. But it is the end of season 2, so we do have our shortlist discussion
to do that.
still to go. I know there's still more, Cameron. We're not done yet.
Yeah.
So we're gonna run through the 11 episodes of the season. We're gonna give them a yay or nay and come up with our definitive shortlist at the end here. So, starting with episode 1, The Big Leagues, with Batman and Robin and the Joker. Cameron, yay or nay?
Oh, yay, for sure.
Oh, absolutely a yay. Like we can't possibly just like skip past a critical crossover episode. So that one gets a total yay. Episode 2, Power Play, when Richie gets powers.
I was debating this one, but me being the stickler that I am for these rules, I have to say no.
You gave it a no.
I gave it a nay.
I gave it a yay because I like that idea of what happens when Richie gets powers too. I thought it added some interesting character play.
Did they introduce a gadget in this episode?
I honestly don't remember. But part of the downside of doing these every other week is I have to like really stop and think about these episodes.
Yeah.
No, from continuity here on the DCAU fandom, we get Ragtag's origin in Attack of the Living Brain Puppets, as we discussed, and then we get the fact that Richie's full name is Richard Osgood Foley, which is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, otherwise, I don't think it has any sort of continuity relevance. So,
wait, you said his middle name is Osgood?
Osgood.
That's Jimmy's last name.
Jimmy
Osgood.
Oh. Wait, from today's episode?
Yeah, so I guess that's just their filler their filler name.
Oh my God, you're right. I didn't even what? What conspiracy?
Yeah.
Maddie, I know you're
shot
listening.
his brother.
We need you to do a full on like conspiracy deep dive on this and figure out where the Osgood name significance comes from.
Yeah.
You're far better prepared for this than we are because we don't know anything. Okay, so we're giving Power Play a nay.
I'm giving it a nay.
Okay, we're giving that a nay. All right. Episode 3, Brother Sister Act.
Nay.
Yeah, I give it a nay as well. Like, I like that we get more from Sharon, but overall, I'm like, it didn't really have anything that substantial to add.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is my tough one.
This is a tough one. All
Static
right.
Shack.
I said
4.
yes.
Said it? Okay, good. I also said yes.
I said yes. We look, we have to. Like, this episode is like, this sounds very bizarre, but in a lot of ways, Like, this episode is to Static Shock what, say, like, Heart of Ice is to Batman Animated Series. Not necessarily in terms of being, like, a great episode, but it is, like, what the show is known for. Like, the show is known for having the Shaq connection.
The first of the Shaq episodes.
The only Shaq episode.
The first of the Shaq episodes. I will write a Shaq episode.
Please do. Please write it. We'll do a script read.
Yeah.
We've discovered those are amazing. We'll do it. All right, we're giving a yes on Static Shack. Number 5, Frozen Out.
Of course.
I gave it a yes as
you
well.
Have
I
to.
mean,
that's such a good episode.
It is a really good episode. I think it does what a lot of other shows don't do. It's an absolute yes on that one. Mm-hmm. Number 6, Sunspots.
No.
Yeah, same. I don't even remember what this episode is about, so I gave it a no.
That's when he loses his powers.
Yeah, who cares? Nothing else happens in that episode.
He uses the grenades that Richie made for him.
So I think here's a good way oftentimes to decide whether it's a relevant episode or not is the villain in it for about 5 minutes, and is that villain just a recurring one they had to shoehorn in because they didn't have enough time to write a new one?
Hot streak.
Yep. I think most Hot Streak episodes we can skip.
Until
just
the
watch
last season.
The Sugar Ray music video instead to get the same effect.
Yeah.
All right. Number 7, Pop's Girlfriend.
I said no.
I said yes.
Okay.
So I think I included it because so our definition is the strict definition is it is necessary for continuity or it's a really good episode, right?
Yes.
I agree that I don't even remember the villain plot really in this one. I think it was like the mutation thing, or the big mutant monster guy was the villain at the end. So I think it's a no.
Yeah.
But I think this is a super important episode in terms of the relationship between Mr. Hawkins and Virgil. And like that relationship is so central to the show. And I think it fleshes out Mr. Hawkins a lot in terms of
you've convinced
outside
me
of his kids. So yeah. I gave it a yes.
I'll give that a yes.
Okay, good. All right, number 8, Bad Stretch.
Of course.
Yeah.
All Rubber Band Man episodes.
All of them. We need all of them.
Except the next one.
Okay. All right. We'll have a discussion.
Okay, yeah. Bad Stretch, yes, definitely.
Wait, I'm looking this up again. Bad Stretch.
That's the one where he fights
Ebon. One with Ebon. Yeah, that's a really good episode.
Like, yeah, and it continues the story because now that's the one where we learn they're brothers.
Which never comes up again, ever.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but we know.
So, but for continuity's sake, apparently it's relevant.
Yeah.
All right, we'll give Bad Stretch a yes. Number 9, Attack of the Living Brain Puppets.
I said no.
Hard no on that. Absolute skippable episode. Number 10, Duped.
Look. I love Backstreet Boys.
We know.
And
we had a lengthy discussion about it.
Rubber Band Man. But I don't think this episode is necessary at all.
So I gave it a yes.
Okay.
For 2 critical reasons. One is this shows what we were talking about last week or 2 weeks ago, in that Rubber Band Man is the only superhero pretty much in the entire DCAU that has a fully fleshed out life outside of being a superhero. His identity is known. He has an actual like healthy relationship. We don't see that anywhere else for its significance. And 2, in the same way that Shaq episode is so critical, I think this one's important because it goes to show like what makes this series stand out from the other ones, which is that it is deeply rooted in pop culture. It's clunky sometimes in its execution, but no other DCAU show would have a like real life person be so prominent in it. And it is so specific of the time. I think this maybe more so than any other episode gives you a snapshot of when the show was made.
Okay, that's a very good point. I will share my counterpoint now.
Okay. We're recreating Crossfire here over the Backstreet Boys inclusion in Static Shock.
I do agree that I get such a cool encapsulation of the time.
Okay.
But for a Rubber Band Man story, it is a complete side story for him where he has no character growth in this.
Okay.
In his arc of hero to anti-hero to hero. Or sorry, villain to anti-hero to hero.
Okay.
Where in this episode, he's not famous anymore. He actually loses fame and regains fame. Mm-hmm. The character obviously never reappears again. His relationship with any of these characters never reappear again. And I think it is smoother to go from the Ebon episode right into the next appearance
Okay.
which will be the dyslexia episode.
All right, you know what? I will give that to you. You remember the static continuity way better than I do, so I defer to you on this. We'll give it a no.
Great.
All right, and then of course, episode 11, Jimmy.
Oh, you have to.
Yes, absolutely have to
Yeah,
include
you
it.
have to.
It is really really good. So that makes our season 2 shortlist. Episode 1, The Big Leagues. Episode 4, Static Shack. Episode 5, Frozen Out. Episode 7, Pop's Girlfriend. Episode 8, Bad Stretch. And episode 11, Jimmy. That's a pretty good. It's one,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5,
Cut it in half.
6. Yeah, cut it in half, which is
Yeah.
usually kind of on par for us in terms of our shortlist. But I think a pretty damn solid one. So. All right, let me do some quick notes from friends. They won't take too long here.
Okay.
We're running a little bit lengthy, but that's okay. We had a lot to say this week. So, because we put out a call, as you may recall, at the end of our last episode, asking people to write in if they had any experiences with
Oh, that's right.
student body, any like student council stories. And we had 2. So one was from Benjamin David, friend of ours from the Above and Batman Beyond podcasts. And he writes, yo, so good to have you guys back. Glad you're well and safe. Thank you, Benjamin. Same to you. He says, so this isn't a dramatic student council story, but it might be a quick pop culture nerdy thing of me to mention. In the 7th grade, a group of us ran under the campaign slogan, Ticket in Black, because I'm old enough that MIB1 was still new. The artists in the group made campaign posters drawing us in black suits and a bunch of aliens surrounding us. We all went to one of their houses and drew an oak tag and had pizza, and there were no phones, and it was 90s as fuck. Cool kids made fun posters. We lost, by the way. He said that was the one and only year I was a solid student, so that was the last student council story I have. Vote Ticket Black in 98. So just... I love that. I do love a great dated pop culture reference because that's all we do here.
Yeah.
Really. So that was fantastic. Benjamin, thanks for writing in and sharing that story. And then the other one we had was from Ashley Clark. She is a teacher, so she has a little experience with this. So she wrote in regards to the high school politics, yes, there are those kinds of shenanigans in public school sometimes. I can't get specific, but trust me, they exist. High school is just a microcosm of society anyway. And just like you have your people overly invested in things that ultimately are important in the adult world, it's the same in high school. And she wraps it up by saying, I would posit that both of you didn't run in the crowds that would have been concerned about it.
Yes, that's true.
100%.
Yeah, I'll reference one of my favorite songs again, as I've probably referenced many a time on this podcast. The great anthem from Bowling for Soup, High School Never Ends.
High school never ends. It's true. Great song from Bowling from Soup. But yeah, Ashley, you're absolutely right. We were part of the group that was, well, frankly, watching Static Shock.
Yeah.
So, all right, Cameron, shall we land things here with some bat plugs? What do you got for me?
Let's do it. I watched Code 8 this week.
I did too.
Yeah, it's good.
It's pretty good.
It's really good. I was very pleased with it. Of the like new, because we've talked about this before and how film doesn't do a great job showing off like new powers.
Yeah.
I think this is just a better push.
Okay, yeah. So I never
or
saw
like
push, but yeah, it's a similar idea.
Jumper, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like it definitely fits in that world. With a little bit of like District 9 tied into it on the side.
Yeah, that's a comment I made too, is that it had there were similarities there. It had the same sort of like gritty tone to it.
No, Code 8 was great.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was, a little tropey at times, but I thought it was really well cast. I thought both Steven and Robbie Amell did a really great job. I thought they did a pretty good job visualizing a lot of the powers, and the effects looked really good. I mean, for being definitely like a low budget movie, the like robot police effects and then the superpower effects were both
they all looked great.
Done. It looked really really good. I mean, I think this sounds like damning with faint praise a little bit, but I think it's a great Netflix film. It's up on Netflix.
I agree. Oh yeah, I think like if you compare it to the last kind of like VFX heavy movie they did, which would have been the Will Smith one.
Yeah. So this wasn't actually Netflix produced.
Oh.
Yeah. It so I guess it was a little misleading when I said it's a good Netflix film. Like it wasn't Netflix produced. It was produced independently, and it ended up on Netflix after it got, I think, a very small theatrical distribution.
Okay. Yeah. I remember because I still follow Steven on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah. I remember
amazing.
him talking about it. Yeah. So it definitely had a small.
But what I mean by it being a good Netflix film is like it is. I find a lot of Netflix films are like 70% of a good movie, where it's like, oh, like most of this is there, but there maybe just wasn't a little bit that like extra effort needed to push it over the edge. To me, this felt like the sort of movie you watch on Netflix and you're like, oh, like that, that's actually really good. Like I totally could have seen that in the theater and probably would have enjoyed it, but it's a good like at home experience of being like pleasantly surprised by it being a little bit better than you expect it to be. So
yeah, and then I don't know if we've done this before. I have an anti-plug.
I don't think we've ever done this before. Are you doing a PSA? Are you warning people against something?
I am, against a show that I watched the first 2 episodes of, and I wish I could take my life back.
What'd you watch?
Too Hot to Handle.
Okay, our friend CJ is blasting Instagram right now talking about Hio. He and his boyfriend are just watching it nonstop. What is this show? I don't know.
It is the horniest show on Netflix. Dare I say the horniest show ever produced that is still PG-13. But the premise is, it's so dumb. They've brought in like 12 very, very, very attractive people.
That's surprising.
And it's a Love Island, basically. It's the Love Island premise. They're all on this resort together. But the twist is these are all very thirsty people. And they can't have sex.
Why? Wait, like mandated by the show they can't have sex? Like if they have sex, they get kicked off?
No. So it's the show is made to help attractive people understand what relationships are, because it's that like superficial. So everyone starts off with a pot of $100,000.
Okay.
If you do any kind of physical movement in a relationship sense, your pot goes down. Not just your individual pot, but the group pot goes down.
Oh, okay.
So if you kiss, that's $3,000 you lose. And if you have sex, it's $16,000 you lose.
Oh. What are the rules on masturbation here?
No masturbation.
No. Oh.
Yeah, God. And it's a month-long show.
You know what? I can understand why this show would have so much relevance in our current situation.
Yeah.
As many of us now find ourselves in socially mandated sexual isolation.
It honestly feels like the exact opposite of Love is Blind.
It kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah, but the show is so bad. It's literally, like I said, it's the horniest show on Netflix. Because it's just a lot of attractive, because they all came expecting it to be like a Big Brother kind of thing, where it's just, being very sexual and living on a beach together.
Yeah.
So they all brought, like very skimpy stuff to try and tempt all of their, their island mates. And now, it's like, I was talking to one of my friends about this. I think this was more produced from a female view, or from like a female team, because the guys are way more attractive than the girls.
Interesting. Is it all straight couple? Like all straight people?
It's all straight, yeah.
Oh, God. Of course it is. You know what they did that? Because that would never work if they were. I know.
I was thinking about that. Yeah, it would never work.
It would never, ever, ever work. Although maybe the gays needed the most. Just saying. So
yeah, I would plug as an anti-plug of don't watch it.
Our first ever Cameron warning. I also really want to emphasize for the listeners how significant this is.
Because I will watch anything.
You, Cameron, you will watch anything.
Yeah.
And enjoy it.
Yeah.
You have found something that's beyond even your capacity to enjoy. Mm-hmm. Cameron, I'm very impressed and proud of you right now.
I think this is the first thing I've ever given like a thumbs down on Netflix.
I think it is. You're like that episode of The Simpsons and Homer's a food critic.
Yeah.
And he just loves everything.
Exactly.
Although maybe this is you sliding to the opposite space now. Maybe now you're gonna get like hooked on giving things negative reviews, and you're just gonna hate everything from now on. I have
been finally going back and watching like older films that have been on my list for a while, and I'm really sad to say I haven't liked a lot of them.
If you watch Casablanca, don't talk to me about it.
No, I've seen Casablanca.
Okay,
we talked about it. No, but I watched Totoro the other day for the first time.
Oh, okay.
I didn't really like it.
I've never seen it, so
yeah. I wasn't a fan of Totoro.
Okay.
That'll be it for me.
Okay.
What have you been watching, listening, reading?
So a couple like quick plugs as part of our DCAU community. So obviously I'll put down in the show notes the live script read we did. The Watchtower Database guys asked us to join them for the At Home Comic Con. Their panel was doing a live script read of Legends of the Dark Knight, as I referenced at the top of the show, and we joined, and it was super fun. And they recorded all and put it up on their YouTube channel like immediately.
Yeah.
So as of right now, it's also linked. It's the link in our Instagram bio. It'll be up there for maybe the next week or so before going back to just links to the podcast as we normally have it. And I'll put it in the episode notes down there too. But it's a lot of fun. We both had a lot of fun doing it. Like, we read it through. There's like kind of banter and goofs along the way as well. I'm just excited I got to play Joel Schumacher. So.
You did. I wish I kind of had more energetic characters.
Hey, it's all good. It's the first one of these we've done. I would suspect probably not the last, though, because we had a great time doing it. So we're going to put a quick plug in for that, as well as a plug for the DCAU review. Cal and Liam, they just had their 100th episode. Did I plug this last time? I don't think I did. Did I?
I don't remember.
If I didn't, I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just had their 100th episode talking about Starcrossed, the series finale to Justice League. So we're doing it in chronological order. They kind of jump around and do it in a different structure, and they actually go through and give like a point system. They have a really good review. But it was 100 episodes. They reached out to a lot of us who are in the same community to do a little shout out. So there's me doing a little shout out for them. And congratulations on there. And they're great. I've listened to a few of their episodes. I just listened to their episode on If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich, which is one of our favorite BTOS episodes. Cal and Liam, if you're listening, I will acknowledge I didn't finish the Starcrossed episode because I haven't really seen it in a long time. And as I was listening to you guys talking about it, I wanted to watch it so bad, and I am deliberately not watching this stuff until it comes up in our rotation, which has been hard because there's some really great stuff in Justice League and Justice League Limited that I desperately want to watch.
Yeah.
And so I stopped listening, so it'll be like nice and fresh when we come to it, whenever we get to it. But yeah, a quick plug for them. And then I read the first 2 issues of Batman: The Adventure Continues, the new comic set in the DCAU. They're pretty good. So it's written by Alan Burnett and Paul Dini, obviously like big influential writers of the animated series, and it's drawn by is it Ty Templeton, who did a lot of the art for the comics that came out around the show as well. And like I'd say that they're in the same sort of vein as those sort of tie-in comics, which not many of them are really particularly standout. Like they don't really necessarily hold up on their own as like great episodes. But they're pretty fun stories so far, and the whole idea is that it's kind of loosely based off of the action figure line that's going on right now.
Interesting.
So they had all the like the really nice figures. Like I have some of them. I have the Batman, I have Batman Beyond, like really accurate figures of the show's characters from BTOS and Batman the Animated Series. And the new Batman Adventures. But these are characters we never got a chance to see. So like there's Deathstroke, there's Red Hood, there's Batman in his Dark Knight Returns armored suit. So now they're basically finding ways to incorporate some of those characters and designs into a comic series with an actual story behind it. So it's fun. It's well worth a read, and it's going to be ongoing for a while. But the first 2 issues are out, and the next one will be dropping the day after this podcast comes out. So go check that out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I think that finally does it for us today.
We did it. Thank you for listening to a very special episode.
This was, the thing is, this was a very special episode about a very special episode.
It was.
Yeah. But no, thank you as always for listening. We always appreciate when you guys send in notes and comments. So thanks to Benjamin and Ashley for doing so. If you guys have thoughts on this episode, which there's a lot to dissect here. I'd really love to get people's perspective on this, and maybe even a little more commentary on sort of its modern relevance. Heavy though those conversations are, they're worth having. You can find us at Timm Talk Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Gmail. Cameron, where can they find you?
If you want to see my art page, you can find that at Cameron.Dexter on Instagram. And if you want to see my face and my sad experiences not going to Disney, you can find that at CamDexter_adventures.
Hey, there's that one girl who like basically made her own Disneyland rides at home.
I've been seeing a lot of those recently. There's a couple people doing it.
You know what, Cameron? You're pretty much always wearing Disney merchandise to begin with, but
I got my Hercules shirt on.
You got your Hercules shirt on, your go-to Avengers hat on. Why not just put on a little bit more Disney merch than normal? Maybe just put on some of the classic tunes on your speakers in the background. Maybe just sit in your chair and spin around and pretend you're on Mr.
Well,
Toad's Wild
see,
Ride.
the problem is if I do that, I would get really, really sad.
Oh no. Okay, don't do that.
I watched someone did like a helicopter view, or no, drones. They had flew a drone over an empty Disneyland.
Yeah.
And it just hurt watching that.
Did it hurt because you wish you could be there when it was that empty?
Yes, because there's no lines.
No lines. What we all dream of. You can only imagine how insanely packed that park is going to be when things reopen.
Yeah, I know.
So,
but I don't care. I'll be there.
You'll of course be there, and you can see him on his Instagram when that happens.
Mm-hmm. Where can I find you, Chris?
You can find me at Lordifer on Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, been doing some like story stuff here and there. I finally finished my massive 1989 Lego Batmobile, so I need to compile that into one story. I'll be putting it up there soon, so you can go there.
Nice, congratulations!
It is probably one of the most beautiful Lego sets I've ever seen in my entire life. It is like it's built in the other room. I walk past it every day, going to and from my desk while I'm working, and I just stop and stare at it. It is legitimately like the gorgeous work of art. So yeah, check that out. But no, thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time for premiere of Static Shock Season 3, which I believe is the beginning of the new animation style, right?
It is.
And
so
Gear.
Excited. Gear's episode 2. Oh yeah, we'll be doing episode 2. Yeah.
Oh God, so excited for the introduction of Gear. Love him. All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks guys.
Bye.
Superhero Static Shock.
Whoop whoop.
Superhero Static Shock.